let me pull back to this because I promised you a slide here that I would cover right here. So there are some limitations of the argument. Okay. Some things that we know, some things we don't know. All right. So we need to get clear on what it is that these arguments are actually doing, what they're trying to accomplish, that sort of thing. So here's what we do know based on if the arguments go through. All right. Like maybe you don't like them. Okay. First, you can't just like them. You actually have to like refute them. But if they go through, right? If they go through, they have to be argued for, of course, and established. And I've tried to do some of that here. It's hard to do in a very limited space like this, but I've tried to do some of that. But if these arguments go through, we know that the first cause is infinite and have every purely positive perfection. We know a lot of negative things about the first cause. It's immaterial, it's timeless, unbounded. However, the argument doesn't show that the first cause is personable or personal. Now, I have my doubts about this because earlier in this stream, I said something about the idea that I do think it would have to have agency. It would have to be an agent, have agential power in order to act, because it's not like some inert object sitting for all of eternity. Again, that just violates all physical laws to think that an inert object can somehow make itself move, let alone move other things and start everything. So the only thing that does that are persons. But even if it were person, we don't get this. We don't get that the person is wise, knowledgeable, just, loving. So this could be, suppose we get a first cause, could be something that's purely evil, to be honest with you. It could be something that is an evil God. So here are some things that are alternatives that are still wide open possibilities, even if you accept all 5 ways. Okay. First of all, it doesn't rule out Manichaeanism, the idea of this cosmic dualism. That's what Manichaeanism. And I mention it because St. Augustine refuted this in like the 4th century AD or 5th or something. But yeah. So it doesn't refute that. So it doesn't refute polytheism, right? Because I said earlier, there has to be at least one necessary cause, but there could be more than one. What else? So those are on the board. Let me talk about cosmic dualism again. The idea there that not just that there's 2 gods, but on Manichaeism, which actually survives today, it's an old like North African Berber source, or maybe even like Persian, something like that. I forget its origins. But cosmic dualism, in this sense, there's 2 all-powerful gods, one that is all good and one that is all evil. So this is actually one of the reasons why Augustine rejected this, is because if you have an all good God and all evil God, and they are equal in absolute power, you cannot ensure that the all good God will win out. Like, in other words, it doesn't solve the problem of evil. So we'd like to think that good will win out in the end, or at least that would be justice. But if your worldview has a view in which, well, could be evil that wins out, that's very unsatisfying. It's not. I mean, that sort of started his let's say aversion to this, but he has obviously also philosophical arguments that rebut this. Rebut and refute. I just said together. But let me pull this one back up as well. And I'm gonna finally finish out this chart. There it is. Okay, perfect. All right, so you should be looking now at a filled out chart. Now, having gone through 4 and 5, we can now see that, of course, look, I have this column of the conclusions because it's important to point out that the 5 ways do not conclude that a Christian Trinitarian God of Orthodox Christian faith exists. It does not. So if you're an atheist and you're thinking, well, he didn't prove that. Well, no, he didn't. Even if he says, and this we know to be God, again, because as I mentioned earlier in this stream, I mentioned in my last stream, his audience is such that he doesn't really have to argue for that. If he's talking to atheists, if his audience is atheist instead, he would have done more work, and he actually does in other areas. It's just in this section of the Summa where he talks about the 5 ways in very summary form. That's all he discusses here. But in other words, we don't get the Christian Trinitarian God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit Orthodox Christian faith, these are the only things we got. It's got to be first mover, got to be first cause, necessary being, ultimate existence, ultimate intelligent desire. So we talked about these right here, these attributes. Now let's look at the other ones. If the fourth argument goes through, it would show that an ultimate being exists. That is, what attributes would this thing have? Well, we can infer that, obviously it's going to be ultimate, it's kind of redundant there, but the idea that it would have every positive perfection. It would have every positive perfection in this sense. Ultimate perfection, be the highest good, the highest true thing, the highest, most beautiful thing, so on and so forth, because it would be being itself, responsible for being itself, and it would be responsible for existence itself. There's also this sense of, because of all these highest perfection and ultimate perfections, there's this sense of being unified because all these things have existence. So there would be unity in God as well. You can take from here and get to the idea that this wouldn't be polytheism, but you'd need a lot of work to get there. But that's the route that would take, and why many people do take that. Now, what about these? The design argument. If this argument goes through, big if, I know a lot of people in the chat are very upset about the design argument and these arguments in general. That's fine. But you understand what a conditional statement is, I'm sure, that if this happens, then if it rains, the streets will be wet. Well, if it doesn't rain, the streets will never be wet. But you're here, you're discussing this, so we're talking about the condition. If this argument goes through, this is what follows. We can infer that this thing will have certain attributes, not just going to be some inert object, some domino in the first chain of events. It'll be something that is very intelligent because it is an intelligent designer. It will be something that is not just a designer, but also creator. I mean, you would not get this actually from the design argument. You would get it from a accumulation of these. And this is important at this point to discuss the idea that these are not standalone arguments necessarily, especially the way that Aquinas presents them. It's a cumulative case for God's existence, right? So, hey, you don't like the fourth way. That's fine. You're not a Platonist. That's okay. You're a good Aristotelian. That's all right. There's 4 other arguments to deal with. You don't like the design argument. Okay, that's fine. Or you don't understand the 4. Whatever. There are 3 other arguments, 4 other arguments that one has to wrestle with. So, yeah. So, and if I could actually create a different chart that shows that I think you get a designer here. It could be, for example, that that's not a creator and only a designer. But if you couple the 5th way with, say, 1, 2, or 3, then it would also be a creator designer. Actually, the 4th way as well. But here, only in the 5th way, we don't get the idea that it's creator necessarily. We only get the idea that it's a designer. Same way over here. Like here, we said on the contingency argument is a necessary being, but there's at least one of them. The idea that, well, there could be more than one. Could be that, well, the one that created the world, the one that's the first domino, or the one that is the necessary being that created the others, or whatever, is actually not the one that's responsible for creating the universe. That's fine. In that case, they wouldn't be a creator. I'm just looking at the logical space here, possible ways to object to this. That's fine. So, yeah, you can couple these together as well. And like if I were to extend this chart to another column, I could say, okay, combinations of 1, 2, and 5, you would get this attribute, and so on and so on. And in that case, I would probably remove creator and sustainer as well. Sustainer happens here is another question mark, because, that's another one I did put in here, is that deism is not ruled out as well. Obviously, you can think that there's an ultimate being, absolute being, necessary being that's responsible for all of the universe existing, but you might think that that thing is not personally interacting with his creation, hasn't revealed itself divinely, and has set no categories out or parameters out for its worship. It's just created the thing, walked away, left us to our own devices. That's what deism is. And these 5 ways don't rule that out either. So that's entirely possible. Now, that's why I have this in question mark form, because if you're a deist, of course, at the very least, if you're a deist, you would reject that God would be a sustainer. It would be just something that created, walked away, left it behind, and doesn't sustain the things in existence. But Orthodox Christians have a doctrine that God is not only just creator, but he's also sustains things in their existence because the ultimate being, and I suppose if you combine 4 and 5, then you would get sustainer. But ultimate being is responsible. Just in the same way, let's just think of this. Like if goodness itself doesn't just, it's really, oh, that was the correct. If goodness itself, let's say the good, right? This transcendental, the good. Or let's try the true, actually, because it doesn't give me that big line up there. So the true. If there are true things down here, then up here, the truth will be responsible for its existence, but it will be responsible for its continued existence as well. Same here with good. Let's scroll down. So look at that right here. This thing that is good is not just goodness itself responsible for it beginning to be good. Goodness itself is also responsible for its continued goodness. Same thing with beauty itself, responsible for continued beauty. So it stands to reason that being itself would be not just the creator responsible for these things beginning to exist. Being itself would also be responsible for these things continuing to exist. That way you get the sustainer attribute.